Namaste, Yogi Astrologers, and welcome to what is formerly the Alchemical Astrology Report. Katrina, my wife, and I are starting a new chapter in the way we report on the astrological weather for you all. We are changing the title and the format. We'll still come out every 2 weeks on the new moon and full moon, I think, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But now we are calling it the Shaman and the Mermaid Astrology. Yay!
It's just much more fitting.
Yes, so we'll be with you, both of us, on the new moon and full moon. And we're pretty excited. So this is the first time. It's a little bit, like car talk, but astrology.
Click and clack. Yin and yang, Shiva Shakti, same.
Shaman Mermaid.
Right.
So welcome to the Shaman and the Mermaid Astrology Reports, coming to you every 2 weeks through Karma Yoga Center. Okay, so what is going on? Well,
Eclipse season.
Eclipse season. This is a big one, yogis. This eclipse, there are two coming up, but the first one we're talking about is happening Tuesday, July 2nd at basically 11 a.m. in Denver Pacific Standard Time. It is a solar eclipse, and if you're thinking, how the heck did I not know anything about this? It's because you won't see it. And for that matter, the second eclipse, which is on Tuesday, July 16th, will be at about 2 p.m. on the full moon, and you won't see it. But with eclipses, you will likely feel them, whether it's on the conscious or unconscious energy bodies. And we're going to talk about the energies of the eclipse. And the eclipse energies, at least in astrology, are known to persist in the astrological weather for 3 to 6 months before and 3 to 6 months after the actual eclipse. Do you want to talk a little bit about what signs our eclipse and new moon is happening in?
Well, the new moon is in Cancer, and so will the eclipse be in Cancer, as is the sun in Cancer. So whenever you have a new moon, the sun is right there conjunct next to it. They're both at 10 degrees. The sign of Cancer is the water sign that is the very emotional sign, sensitive, and there's lots of inner child activity there, or darker self stuff, if you will. It's around home, it's around family, it's around getting your home life in order, essentially.
That's pretty good. So Cancer, Cancer new moon and eclipse. What this means also for a new moon is every month there is at least one new moon, sometimes two. And the new moon energy is amplified to a super duper triple diptych, whatever you want to call it, new moon. The energy is much more powerful than a regular new moon because the moon is with the sun, the moon, and this mystical point in the sky called the
North Node.
The North Node, which is in the sign of Cancer. Katrina was just talking about this Cancer energy, and the North Node is where eclipses happen. And 2 weeks later, the moon will cruise away from the sun and line up on the South Node in the sign of Capricorn. So in 2 weeks, on July 16th, it'll be a full moon in Capricorn. And the nodes are very mystical, powerful points on our charts that help us understand our evolution. What do you know about the nodes?
Well, in Vedic astrology, you may have heard them referred to as Rahu, the North Node, and Ketu, the South Node. That's just another way that we talk about them. But the North Node of the moon, and again, these are invisible energies in the sky. We don't see them, but where they are, like Michael said, is where the eclipse point will be. That's when the solar eclipse will happen, right on that North Node, and then 2 weeks later, in the exact opposite point, the South Node, as he mentioned. So the North Node, or Rahu, is considered to be where your soul wants to move forward in life, where it's like yearning to go. So the North Node is in Cancer, and Cancer, as we've established, home, emotions, inner child, sense of security, establishing some groundwork around home and security. And so your soul self as a collective, because this is an astrology for all of us, The North Node is saying, let's get our emotions together. So the way I kind of encapsulate it in a nutshell is this: it's a chance for us to step into some emotional maturity, which I feel is what we need right now more than ever, because we've got big shift coming at us and we can't be reactive. We can't feel ungrounded. We can't come out of a place of fear and anxiety and playing small. We're going to have to really get big and powerful and get our emotions in order. And that's exactly what the North Node is suggesting that we do.
Well, along with the North Node, South Node axis of what's in our past and what is our future or our path, the good path, red road, is, we've said this in previous reports, the word eclipse means to cut. It's from the Greek tradition. Now you get everything with two visuals, in case you didn't get it. Shaman the Mermaid Astrology Report. So the way I've been feeling into this eclipse is, you can think of the Greek fates. They are weavers when they talk of the mythology, the ones who cut the threads for someone's life, cut it off, and then they weave what your life is going to look like. Or another way to look at that is your soul has made a choice to come here to planet Earth with the help of oversouls and Mother Earth herself, Mother Gaia, and invited you here so that you could weave a beautiful tapestry, a beautiful poem, or become a flower that blossoms to share with all the others. And in that, there's some things that need to be weeded out as you come here, as you evolve, and some things that need to be encouraged to grow. And so as we come into the eclipse season, you can think of one of the fates as pulling something taut that needs to be cut. And why do you pull things taut? You're under tension, it can be stressful, it feels like it's under deep examination, and that's what the eclipse energy does, but it's pulling something out to say, this is done. And the tautness helps you make a clean cut with the past and go forward. So when you're preparing to come into this eclipse season, whether it's for Tuesday, July 2nd, or the second eclipse on the 16th, this whole time you can be looking at, or the universe has already told you what to look at, more than likely, and you are already seeing what needs to go from the past. And as Katrina talked about the sign of Cancer, on the other side, our teacher Kaipacha spoke about this in his report. Cancer is the sign of birth and coming forward. Did you want to say something about what it might be to come through the eclipse and maybe rebirth?
Well, not only are you in the sign of Cancer, which, as Michael said, is rebirth, but you have the moon, which is home in Cancer, so it's got an extra solid force there. The moon is its natural home base is in Cancer. But it's a new moon, so that's a rebirth too. That's a beginning. The moon is starting to grow big again into the fullness and taking a whole new cycle. So there's this big charge for birthing or rebirth, or it's actually the essence of summer right now. Like, we're in a full abundance, or the fullness of the start of our summer. And we can use this time to help us to take charge on that new forward thinking that the North Node is asking of us to do. Birth a new intention, birth a new idea, birth a new dream. And they're really fertile right now. We just came out of that Gemini period where we've had lots of ideas flowing, and then this is the time now we move into the Cancer sign and we make it come into a birth or a creation, and especially prepping that for Leo coming up in our next season.
Well, you kind of got the idea of what's going on with the new moon eclipse. And let's talk about what is hanging out with the new moon eclipse. We have Venus, Mercury, and Mars together with the sun and the moon. They're not all in the same sign, but they're all within about 30 degrees of each other in the sky, and that's pretty close. And so they're all influencing each other. And so these 5 personal planets are traveling together, surrounded by this mystical eclipse point that says we need to move into this rebirth of being emotional, sensitive, patient, caring, connecting to the sacred feminine, Mother Earth, and we need to cut what is old from the past that is decaying, that is bad structure, that is holding us back, both personally and at the cosmic Earth level. So what would it mean to have Mars and Mercury and Venus hanging out with us at this time?
This is the sacred masculine, the sacred feminine, and then that Mercury piece is the communication piece between it all. So as we're coming into a time to maybe make some cuts, get that clean cut, a new start, a rebirth, is look at your personal relationships. Michael mentioned these are personal planets. These are the planets that are closest to us on the side, the Earth realm. And then you get to the bigger planets, and those are our transpersonal planets. So these are the ones that are kind of what you do individually. Your masculine energy, your feminine energy, and the way you communicate or express this these sides of yourself, the masculine and feminine. You could think of it, if that's too much, think of it as yin and yang, or day and night. How you show up and you're vibrant, and then how are you in the evening? You're a little more quiet, reserved. Taking those kind of dualities within ourselves and learning how to express it and communicate. They're all running together. This is a tribe right now, and they're not all in the sign of Cancer, as Michael said, but this clump of planets all hanging out together is called a stellium, and that's just a strong force. It's kind of like if we all did Red Rover, and we're holding hands and we have forearms, we're a strong hold. It's going to be hard to break through. Imagine 6 of us together and somebody comes to try to charge in on that, you're not going to break that gate. And so this is a real strong pact of, hey, let's move forward, cut some stuff out that doesn't serve my individual self. I'm in the sign of relationships, and the sign of, it's not really the sign of relationship as we might think of it as romantic. That would be perhaps more Libra, or even partnerships in business, that's more Libra. This is more relationship with family. If you have to maybe work out some issues with mom and dad, or with some siblings, or the ancestors. Exactly, precisely. It's a time to kind of rectify that, your personal family relationships, make some cuts if necessary. And we know how hard that is when it's family. It's challenging, but you might need a clean slate and a rebirth in those areas, and the eclipse is lining up for you perfectly for that.
So that would be the stellium, or the collection of planetary energies or cosmic energies that are hanging out around the sign of Cancer, a little bit into Gemini, a little bit into Leo. Again, it's the sun, our heart, our expression; the moon, our emotions, our intuition; Mars, the masculine or the yang energy; the Venus, which is the feminine or the yin energy;
and Mercury.
And Mercury, our communicator, and also how we connect to technology and everything else. Opposite of that, 180 degrees in the sky, where the south node is, the south node are things from the past we need to purify, is another stellium. And there is Pluto, which has to do with deep transformation, death and rebirth, the collapsing, crumbling of things, Kali, Shiva energy, and then emerging back out from the light, the phoenix. We also have Saturn, which is rules and boundaries and karma and dharma.
Checks and balance.
Checks and balances. And the south node all hanging out together. And all of this energy of the personal is opposite of the social transpersonal. And this is a big play out of the energies that are happening on so many different cosmic clocks. One cosmic clock is the eclipse. It happens one day and then it's over, though the energy persists like a season. The next bigger clock that's going on here is this 2020 alignment of Jupiter and Saturn and Pluto all on the south node, which hasn't happened for 4,000 years. There's a smaller cycle in there of a Saturn-Pluto conjunction, which is every 33 years. And I won't go too far down the rabbit hole, but when Saturn and Pluto were opposite of each other halfway through the cycle, it was September 11th, 2001. Now they're completing the cycle and doing an end or a finishing off of that cycle of energy. But to get it back a little more to the present astrology, you have Saturn, the rule, the boundary keeper, the checks and balances, opposite of Mars and Mercury and all these other planets. And what might that feel like for us?
Well, think about if you've got the big authoritarian facing off to the kind of young buck warrior and the Devi, the goddess, and telling them, like, what are you kids doing? Where are you going? They're in this kind of future. They're in that orb of the eclipse energy. So they're trying to get their emotions forward moving. And then Saturn and Pluto, who are kind of like, I kind of like to think of them, if you remember back to the Muppets, and remember those two old guys that would sit up in the corner?
Yeah, pretty good.
And they'd make the commentary about everything down on the stage. That's kind of like Saturn and Pluto. It feels a little bit like maybe critiquing or analyzing or judging, but that's kind of the job of Saturn, to say, hey, what are you doing? That's not, you need to reel it back in over here, get a job, break up with this person, like get it in together, get your ducks in a row. And so there's the young buck Mars. I like to think of him as just that headstrong, charging, going out and getting it, and somebody's telling him no, or check yourself, or possibly even great job, but they're in an opposition, so probably lesser to be the attaboy, keep going, and a little bit more of turn and face me and tell me what's going on, when you have to kind of report in. And that's what's happening, is it's a time to turn around and face the deeper truths in ourselves, to really be honest and pay that respect to that part of us that is challenging us and requesting us to be in our biggest way, our emotional maturity, as I keep saying. And what does that mean anyway? Emotional maturity, it's non-reactive, taking the road of love versus falling to maybe feeling cornered and reacting out of a place of fear. Like, what is the most loving reaction I could have here? To me, is emotional maturity. If your kid's acting up, you want to come in and ground them, and you're bad, and you go to your room, and no. Is that the reaction I could use in highest love, or is there another way that I could approach it? And that we're constantly having to pull back. We haven't been taught emotional maturity. We're just stepping into it. And right now, this eclipse is lining us to really be the best effort of this, to really try to set a new groove and take that into our future, and helping clear some of the karma, which is Saturn. Saturn is karma, saying you want to clear some karma, now's the time. Cut some crap out of your life that's not serving you emotionally. Like, why are you being a martyr? Why are you hanging on to that guilt trip? Why are you being insecure? You don't have to be. That's a choice you're making. And it's saying you can let that go and step into a different form of emotion that's a little more mature, rise above it, take the high road. That's North Node. That's this eclipse.
The last little, well, on a personal note, we were talking about what it feels like as we approach this eclipse energy, and it's like, get stuff done.
Yeah.
Mars opposite Saturn. Mars is the doer, and Saturn says, this is what has to get done. And so if you're staying on top of your ducks, even if you feel like you got a ton of stuff to do, this could be a really awesome time to get things done, get things settled, get things put away, get things in order, so that going forward, it's a fresh new start. Let's, like when you're looking for a tool in the garage, it's hung exactly where it needs to be, and there you go.
Great time to clean the garage, which is something we need to do too. I mean, just organization would be really key at this time for seeing what is what you need and what you don't need. And you can let go. Do you really need 3 wrenches all the same size? Let some things go. Cut. Keep hitting that word of what eclipse is, to clip or to cut. One thing I wanted to also throw in there that I forgot to mention, one of the energies around Mercury is commerce and money, and how we business ourselves. And so this is a good time for cutting. Maybe this is when you want to move some money out of that old banking system that is supporting, say, Standing Rock, say like a Wells Fargo or a Chase Bank, and you've got a 401k sitting in that, and you want to move that. This would be a great time to make that cut from that old money, because Mercury is right there in this whole stellium, and take a cut and move it somewhere else. However, that'll lead us into the next thing we wanted to talk about. Mercury is about to go retrograde on the 7th of July. So just a few days after the eclipse, there's a little window that you could go make that move. But then it's always wise to hold off on anything major with contracts, with big communication pieces, big purchases. wait till that retrograde period is over is the recommendation for that, because the retrograde is really supposed to be, it's not that like bad things happen, but it's more of a time to reflect on what you're about to purchase, to make sure all those bits are what you really want, to sit with it a little longer. It gives you a chance to chew the cud a little bit about that decision. So from July 7th until July 30th, 31st is the retrograde period. So that's just a little time out from big commerce, big communication, transportation. If you were planning on buying that car, maybe wait. Again, I'm in that boat. My car just broke down in the shadow of Mercury retrograde, which is transportation. So not unusual that that would happen at this time. But it's also probably best for me to, as I said, chew the cud for a little bit and wait till I purchase that car after July 31st.
And just a little reminder about what is retrograde, not to over talk about it. It's when the planet Mercury gets the closest to planet Earth. And when something gets closer to the Earth, your attention has to be more focused on it. So communication is extra important this time. That's why Katrina was talking about things like contracts or communication. And when Mercury is close, it also brings a lot of busyness in. But it's asking on a different level, so we're talking about things outside, communicating with others, go out. But Mercury says go inside, slow down. How are you communicating with yourself? Are you speaking truth? Are you being clear on what you're transmitting out there? And so Mercury retrograde is a time both externally, but most importantly internally, to review what you're doing on inward communication with yourself.
It's currently Mercury just stepped into Leo, but when it goes retrograde, it'll go back in through Cancer, so that emotional sign, that inward child side. So it's a perfect setup for great reflection, like summertime. Take your journal outside and put your feelings down on paper and reflect on them. I know from my own experience that whenever I just start writing, just start pushing the pen on the paper, stuff comes out of me that I don't even know that was in there. That's what this time is for, is that, aha, I am feeling this way, or that's a great idea. That's what I'm going to do about this situation. And you produced it. Your own inner self brought that out. If you give yourself that reflection time, perfect time coming up.
Well, yogis, that's a lot of information. Just a quick recap. We have a new moon with a solar eclipse happening on Tuesday, July 2nd at about 11 a.m. The eclipse is flanked by all the personal planets. That would be the sun and the moon, the north node, which is where we're tending to evolve to. We have Venus and Mercury down there, and Mars as well. And then opposite that, in 2 weeks, we're going to have a lunar eclipse at the south node, in Capricorn, with Pluto and with Saturn. The Muppet guys up there telling us what we need to do. And we have Mercury going retrograde on Sunday, July 7th, all the way through the 31st. But we are in the shadow now, and the shadow lasts past the 31st into the middle of August. So Mercury retrograde really is not just a 3-week event, it's more like a 6-week event.
It's really been from like the solstice, June 21st, until about August 15th is this kind of retrograde energy. Shadow, retrograde, direct, shadow. So just enjoy summer and take it easy, and maybe keep your communication checked in with that emotional maturity.
Okay, well, there was one other thing, and I'll just say it but not talk about it unless Katrina wants to say it. Chiron's going retrograde the day after Mercury, but it's a long retrograde, so we could probably pick it up on the full moon eclipse report unless you wanted to say something about it now.
Just remember that Chiron is the wounded healer, and Chiron is also squaring the sun and moon right now. So it's a nudge. Again, things that the bodies are lining up, the celestial bodies are lining up saying, do the work, take a look, be reflective, let go of those things that you know are not serving you, make those clip cuts. That's all brewing right now. That's all in the brew. And there's so much more that we don't want to bog you down with, but lots of harmonious things. Like sometimes it tends to see like, look out for this, watch for that. It's not so much to be fearful, because that is exactly where we don't want people to go to in this life, is a place of fear. Fear is the enemy. We want people to go to a place of love. So as you are bringing your awareness into the astrological forecast, remember to hold yourself in high regard, self-esteem, with loving kindness and tenderness for any mistakes we make along the way. Sometimes when we do that inner reflective work, we have to look at our wounds, and it's painful, and it's tender and delicate, and just be gentle with yourself, and remember to be gentle with others too. We're all doing this work together. So maybe hold off on honking that horn so much, peeps, and send out prayers of loving kindness to one another.
Well, peace on our planet, and thank you for tuning in to the new Shaman The Mermaid Astrology Report. My wife Katrina and I will be coming back to you in 2 weeks, and we'll see you at the second eclipse. Namaste.